Welcome back to this channel, Biblical Research and Innovation Network for Africa, Brain for Africa or BrainFA. In the previous video, I gave you an outline of what happened before the call of Abraham. In other words, we considered Genesis chapter 1 to Genesis chapter 11 from a missiological perspective. In this particular video, we want to consider the call of Abraham and his position as far as God's mission is concerned. In other words, we are looking at the missiological implications of the call and ministry of Abraham. If you have not subscribed to the channel, I do encourage you to subscribe and share the link so that others can also benefit from the videos that we have. So, in Genesis chapter 12, that is where we find the call of Abraham. In Genesis chapter 12, verse 1 to 4, we are told that God called Abraham and asked him to leave his place, to leave his parents and siblings, to leave his environment and go to a place that God was going to show him. And that God said he was going to make him great. And other promises are there. Genesis chapter 12, verse 1 to 4. I want us to look at some of the promises that God gave in this case. The first is that he gave him the assurance that he's going to give him a land that he will show him. He will show him a land to settle on, and he will give the land to him and his descendants as their property. And we find this in Genesis chapter 12, verse 7. So we have land as the number one promise. And here later this land will be seen as the land of Canaan. That is the promised land. And it has a lot of missiological and theological implications. Like our part of the world where agriculture holds a major component of our economy, you know the relevance of land. So this promised land, which is later identified as the land of Canaan, is what we are talking about here. The second promise is the promise of nationhood. God said that he will make Abraham great. He will make his lineage great, great in number. So Abraham, even though at this point did not have any child, he was promised that his descendants will be numerous. God is going to make a great nation out of Abraham. And so that also became one of the promises. You can find this also in Genesis chapter 17, verse 4 and 5, as well as the Genesis 12 passage where the call and Abraham's movement is recorded. Then God also talked about protection. He's going to protect Abraham because he's going to bless those who bless Abraham, and he's also going to curse those who curse Abraham. I do not take this as a separate promise. I take this as part of the promise to make him a great nation. But if we consider it as a separate one, then it is the third one. Most important, as far as missiology is concerned, has to do with the promise that through Abraham, he is going to bless all the people on the earth through the seed of Abraham, who is later identified in Galatians chapter 3 verse 16 as Jesus Christ. And in Matthew chapter 1 verse 1, we find that Jesus is a descendant, a direct descendant of Abraham. So Abraham will have a seed. Out of the many seeds, a particular one is singled out, and through this seed, God is going to bless all the people on earth. And this has to do with missional responsibility of Abraham. Abraham has the responsibility to ensure that God's mission is accomplished. And from the missiological point of view, this is very important and this is profound. In the story of Abraham, we find the theme of faith as very prominent. When God told Abraham to leave, we are told that Abraham left. The point is, where is he leaving to, and who is this God who has called him? I told you in the other video that he was from a polytheistic background, meaning that he served different gods, many different gods, or at least his environment encouraged that. And the question is, where is Abraham going, and who is this God behind the call? Yet he moves by faith and trusts that he will become a great nation, even at the time that he did not have just a single child. He still trusted God. So that is an act of faith. He moved with God, then even to the point that when in Genesis chapter 18, God appeared to him as one of the three men who came, and he was hospitable to them. He really believed the promise that the following year, Sarah, his wife, would have a son. When Sarah was laughing, Abraham believed it. Remember, before this time, there was a time that Abraham probably thought that God was not going to fulfill his promise. And so he asked the question, Lord, is it my servant Eliezer who is going to inherit me? Because it was part of their custom that his servant, the eldest of them, or at least the leader of them, could inherit him. But God said, no, come. And God sent him out, said that, look, have you seen the stars? Your descendants will be as numerous as that. So as human as he is, sometimes probably he doubted God. But the points where he expressed faith outweigh the number of times that probably he was doubting. So I'm not saying that one should not be aware of the fact that he doubted at a point, and even to the extent that he slept with Hagar, who was Sarah's maid, to bring forth Ishmael. But even in the midst of that, he still trusted God in a way, and in chapter 18, he demonstrates this trust by saying that, yes, even though I'm old, I would still believe the promise that next year a son will be born to me. If we move on, we get to Genesis chapter 22, where Abraham was tested after Isaac was given birth to, was tested to offer Isaac as a sacrifice. I have a video where I'm explaining why we shouldn't consider God as a bloodthirsty God in spite of this test. In fact, Abraham was ready, and he was so ready to the extent that he tied Isaac up to kill him and burn him for the burnt sacrifice or offering that God had asked him to give. And for me, that is the height of Abraham's faith. No wonder we are expected to be children of Abraham by faith, because he is the father of faith. So once you believe in Jesus Christ, who is the seed of Abraham, who has fulfilled God's promise of blessing the whole world or the entire humanity through Abraham or through his seed, then definitely you become Abraham's child, in the sense that he is our father when it comes to issue of faith. Faith in Abraham's life is key, and it is that which made God consider him as a righteous person. And we find this in Genesis chapter 15 verse 6, where we are told that, and Abraham believed God, and it was credited to him as righteousness. In fact, Abraham did not go to God with works. Other than that, he wouldn't have been considered righteous, but he went with faith. And it is this faith that made him be counted as part of those who are righteous. And this means that if you are out there, you think that in the Old Testament it was about obedience to the laws that saved people or made them righteous, then it is not true. It was still faith. Faith in God, faith in the promise that God had made. That is what made God consider some people as righteous. And to get more of this, I want you to read Romans chapter 3 verse 28 following up to chapter 4 verse 4, where Paul discusses this issue and talks about the fact that if Abraham were to be saved by works, he had some works, but not before God. Before God, you cannot boast of any work and say that you should be saved on the accounts of the works that you have done. No, you can't do that. Another theme that comes up strongly in Abraham's role in God's mission has to do with the Abrahamic covenant. The covenant that God made with Abraham in Genesis chapter 17, where God, having brought Abraham to a point of telling him that his descendants are going to be as numerous as the stars, even though he did not have any child. Now God says that I'm going to make a covenant with you, and the sign of the covenant in the flesh is going to be circumcision. So the covenant that God had with Abraham, the sign, we call it covenant marker, was circumcision. And this is what God did. So that when Isaac was given birth to, after 8 days, Isaac was circumcised. And Abraham was also circumcised as well. The circumcision rite was to be done on the 8th day. And every male child who was under the canopy of an Israelite was expected to go through this. And this kind of covenant marker, which is circumcision, stayed until the new covenant came, where Jesus now gives us the circumcision of the heart. That is what Paul says in Colossians 2. And so we need to take note of that. The missiological implications of the call and ministry of Abraham are not far-fetched. First of all, it points to the fact that there is the need to express faith in God for salvation to be credited to us, or for righteousness to be credited to us. Then it also points to the fact that Jesus is the only way to salvation, or he's the only way to the Father, because Jesus is that seed of Abraham through whom the entire humanity is actually blessed. I believe that you have been blessed in a way by this resource. Thank you very much for watching, and I still encourage you to subscribe to the channel and to go back to the channel Biblical Research and Innovation Network for Africa, Brain for Africa or Brain for, to download more videos. See you some other time. Bye for now.